The wind at 50 stories up doesn't just blow, it screams. It cuts through layers, finding every gap in your armor, every weakness in your warmth. But I don't feel it. I'm standing on a steel beam that's only been bolted down for 3 hours, watching the city of Chicago breathe below me. From up here, the cars are just sparks in a wire, moving through the grid I'm helping to redraw. My foreman, a guy who's been chewing the same toothpick since 1998, nods at me from the lift. We're ahead of schedule. The summit tower is rising faster than the skyline can adjust to it. Then my phone buzzes. Just once. A short, sharp vibration against my hip. I pull it out, my gloves stiff with concrete dust. It's a text from my father, Richard. Haley, Christmas is family only this year. Your sister's in-laws are executives, we can't have you there. I stare at the words. The wind howls, tearing at my jacket, but the silence inside my head is absolute. He didn't say why. He didn't have to. I know what he means. He means my work boots. He means the drywall dust that sometimes settles in the creases of my hands no matter how hard I scrub. He means the way I smell like ozone and steel. Not lavender and old money. My sister, Jessica, married into the Sterling family 6 months ago. The Sterlings are real estate royalty. Old Chicago money. The kind of people who have wings named after them in hospitals they've never visited. My father thinks I'm a site manager. He thinks I take orders. He thinks I'm the help. We can't have you there. It's not a request. It's an eviction notice from my own childhood. I don't type a paragraph. I don't ask if he remembers who paid off his car last year. I don't remind him that I'm the one who fixed the roof he's sleeping under. I just type 4 letters. Okay. I hit send. Then I put the phone away and look back at the city. My city. The one I own more of than he could ever imagine. The wind screams. But I don't. I just get back to work, drop a comment, and let me know where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. I'd love to know who's part of our community. I know exactly what is happening inside my father's house right now. I don't need a camera to see it. I can smell the lemon polish and the anxiety from 20 miles away. My father, Richard, is standing in the dining room. He's 62, retired from a middle management job where he spent 40 years trying to keep his cuffs clean, and he's currently obsessed with the centerpiece. He's adjusting the forks, measuring the distance between the crystal glasses, making sure everything screams old money, even though he's maxed out 2 credit cards to pay for the catering. My sister, Jessica, is there too. She's probably pacing the hardwood floors in a dress that costs more than her car payments, checking her reflection in the hallway mirror every 30 seconds. She married Brandon Sterling 6 months ago, and she's still terrified that someone is going to realize she's just a girl from the suburbs who got lucky. Thank God Haley isn't coming, my father is likely saying, smoothing down the tablecloth. Can you imagine? Sitting next to David Sterling with dirt under her fingernails, she always smells like wet cement and diesel. This is the narrative Richard loves. To him, my career isn't a profession, it's a failure of femininity. He thinks women should be decorative. Like Jessica, who has never worked a 40-hour week in her life, but knows how to fold a napkin into a swan. He looks at her soft hands and sees success. He looks at my calluses and sees a mistake. He thinks I play in the dirt because I couldn't figure out how to marry rich. Brandon says his dad is in a mood, Jessica will whisper, terrified. He says David eats people alive if he smells weakness. We have to be perfect, Dad. No mistakes. They are terrified of David Sterling. To them, he is a mythical creature, a shark they have to entertain without getting bitten. They think they can impress him with the right vintage of Cabernet and polite conversation about golf. It's almost tragic. This is the delusion of the empty wallet. My father believes that power is an aesthetic. He thinks if you dress the part, if you hide the labor, if you pretend you've never broken a sweat, you gain respect. He doesn't understand that men like David Sterling don't care about napkins. They care about leverage. They care about who owns the ground they're standing on. Richard thinks he's protecting the family image by keeping me away. He thinks my laborer job is the liability. He doesn't know that 3 years ago, when the bank came to take his house, it wasn't his clean cuffs that saved him. It was my holding company that bought his distressed debt. He doesn't know he's living in my asset. He spent his whole life looking down on the people who build the world, never realizing that we're the ones who decide which doors stay open and which ones get locked. So, let them have their dinner, let them polish the silver and pretend to be aristocrats. Monday morning is coming, and when the sun comes up, the lion they're so afraid of isn't going to their house. He's coming to my lobby, and I won't be wearing a dress to meet him. Monday morning in my office doesn't smell like coffee, it smells like high-grade adrenaline and the metallic tang of printer ink on fresh contracts. The sun is just hitting the glass walls of the penthouse suite, turning the entire floor into a gold-plated arena. This is the headquarters of H Corp, the holding company that quietly owns a staggering percentage of Chicago's skyline. We don't put our name on the buildings, we just cash the checks. At 9 a.m. sharp, my assistant, Elena, buzzes me. Her voice is usually steady. She's handled city inspectors and union strikes without blinking. But today, there's a tremor in it. He's here, Haley. And he brought the cavalry, David Sterling. The Lion of Lakeshore Drive. He didn't make an appointment. Men like David don't make appointments, they make entrances. He's here because the lease on the Sterling Hotel, the crown jewel of his family's empire, is up for renewal in 30 days. He's received the notification that the landlord is considering other options. He thinks the landlord is some faceless management firm he can bully into submission. He has no idea he's walking into the den of the woman his son calls rough around the edges. Send him to the boardroom, I say. I'll be there in 5. I stand up and catch my reflection in the floor-to-ceiling window. I look like a disaster, at least by my father's standards. I've been on site since 4 a.m. My jeans are stiff with drywall dust. My boots are scuffed, heavy, and caked with the gray mud of the foundation pit. I'm wearing a thermal Henley, and a hard hat is sitting on my desk, still warm from my head. My father would tell me to change. He'd say I need a skirt, suit, pearls, something to soften the edges, something to beg for approval. He'd say you can't meet a billionaire looking like a bricklayer. But I know something Richard doesn't. David Sterling didn't build an empire by respecting suits. He respects the work. He respects the people who know how to pour the concrete before it sets. If I walk in there trying to look like a socialite, he'll eat me alive. If I walk in there looking like I just built the room he's standing in, he might just listen. I grab the hard hat. I don't wipe the dust off my hands. I walk through the office. My team analysts, architects, lawyers don't look up with fear. They look up with readiness. We are a machine. We are silent, efficient, and lethal. I reach the double glass doors of the boardroom. Through the frosted pane, I can see the silhouettes. David is pacing. He's surrounded by 3 suits, probably his general counsel, and 2 VPs. They look agitated. They are used to intimidation tactics, used to walking into a room and sucking the oxygen out of it. I take a breath. It's not a breath of nervousness. It's the breath a diver takes before going deep. I push the doors open. The conversation inside stops instantly. The air conditioner hums. David Sterling turns around. He's 60, silver-haired, built like a linebacker who refused to age. He has the eyes of a predator who hasn't eaten in days. He looks ready to scream at a secretary, ready to demand to see the boss. He looks at my boots. He looks at the grit on my shirt. He looks at the hard hat in my hand. He opens his mouth to dismiss me, to tell me to fetch him a water or get the person in charge. And then I smile. It's not a nice smile. "Good morning, Mr. Sterling," I say, my voice echoing off the mahogany table. "I hear you have a problem with my land." David Sterling stares at me. For 3 seconds, nobody breathes. He looks at my boots, caked in the gray dust of the foundation pit. He looks at the hard hat I just set on the polished mahogany table. His face twists not into fear, not yet, but into the kind of sneer a king reserves for a peasant who stumbled into the throne room. "Is this a joke?" he barks, turning to his general counsel. "I came here to negotiate a 100-year lease extension with the owner of H Corp, and you send me the foreman?" He turns back to me, his voice rising, sharp enough to cut glass. "Get me water. Then get me your boss. Now." I don't move. I don't flinch. I just lean back in my chair, crossing my arms over my chest. I am the boss, David, I say calmly. And the water is in the corner. Get it yourself. His face goes purple. He opens his mouth to eviscerate me, to unleash the legendary temper that has made grown men cry in boardrooms across Chicago. But then, his eyes drift down. Sitting right in front of him, perfectly centered on the table, is the latest issue of Fortune magazine. I put it there 10 minutes ago. The cover isn't subtle. It's a portrait of me cleaner, wearing a black turtleneck, but unmistakably me, standing in front of the steel skeleton of this very building. The headline reads, Haley, the Iron Lady of Chicago. How one woman quietly bought the skyline. David stops. He freezes like a machine whose gears just ground to a halt. He looks at the magazine. He looks at me. He looks back at the magazine. The silence in the room changes texture. It goes from tense to heavy, suffocating. I can see the gears turning in his head. Haley. The name his son, Brandon, mentioned over dinner last night. The embarrassing sister-in-law. The one who works construction. The one they uninvited from Christmas because she didn't fit the aesthetic. He looks at my hands, rough and unpolished. He realizes that the dirt under my fingernails isn't from incompetence. It's from building the cage he just walked into. And then, it happens. You? It's not a word. It's a scream. A sound torn out of his throat that is equal parts horror, disbelief, and hysterical laughter. He stumbles back, actually grabbing the edge of the table to steady himself. You? He gasps, pointing a shaking finger at me. You are? Her? You are the sister? The site manager? I manage the site, I agree. I also own the site. And the hotel sitting on it. And the parking garage next door. David sinks into a chair. He looks like he's having a cardiac event. He isn't angry anymore, he is terrified. He is a man who understands leverage better than anyone, and he just realized he is standing on a trap door. He looks up at me, his eyes wide, and for the first time, I see the shark trembling. Do you realize, he whispers, his voice trembling. Do you realize what almost happened? My son. Your father. They told me you were nobody. They told me you were a liability. He runs a hand over his face, wiping away a sheen of cold sweat. If I had listened to them, he says, the words tumbling out fast. If I had walked in here and treated you like the help. If I had insulted you the way they wanted me to, this deal would be dead. My hotel would be gone. The flagship of my company, my legacy, would be rubble within a month because I listened to a bunch of idiots who care more about table settings than equity. He looks at me with a new expression. It's not just respect. It's awe. He realizes that the person his family threw away is the only thing holding their world together. They don't know, do they? He asks. They think I lay bricks, I say. David starts to laugh again, a low, dangerous rumble. The predator has returned, but he's not looking at me anymore. He's looking at his phone. Well, he says, pulling his phone out of his pocket. Let's educate them. David places his phone in the center of the conference table. He doesn't hold it. He centers it like he's placing evidence in a courtroom. He hits the speaker button. The dial tone echoes in the silent boardroom, a rhythmic, electronic pulse that sounds like a countdown. I need to hear them say it, David mutters, his eyes locked on mine. I need to know exactly who I raised. The line connects. Dad? It's Brandon, my brother-in-law. His voice is cheerful, eager, the voice of a man who has never had to build anything because his last name opened every door for him. Brandon, David says. His voice is dangerously calm, the low rumble of an engine before it redlines. I'm in Chicago. I'm meeting with the owner of the Summit Tower regarding the hotel lease. But before we sign, I have a question about the guest list for Christmas. Oh, right, Brandon laughs, a nervous, tinny sound through the speaker. Jessica and Richard are going crazy with the prep. It's going to be perfect. We got that vintage port you like. Is your sister-in-law coming? David asks. Haley? I lean forward. My heart isn't racing, it's beating with a heavy, slow thud. This is the moment. The truth. Stripped of all the polite excuses. Oh God, no, Brandon says, dismissing me instantly. Don't worry, Dad. Richard handled that. We know you hate awkwardness. Haley is, well, she's a site manager or something. She's always covered in dust. Honestly, she's a bit of an embarrassment. We didn't want her tracking mud onto the lifestyle you're used to. I hear my father's voice in the background, muffled but distinct. Tell him we protected the evening, Brandon. Tell him she understands her place. Yeah, Brandon says, emboldened. Richard said she's better off with her own kind. You know, laborers. We wanted the dinner to be exclusively for executives, people who understand our world. I look at David. He isn't purple anymore. He's white-knuckling the edge of the mahogany table so hard I think the wood might splinter. He is listening to his son, and his in-laws describe me as a stain on their reputation, unaware that they are insulting the only person in the city who can save them. David looks at me. He looks at the hard hat. He looks at the dirt on my boots. And then he looks at the fortune cover again. Executives, David repeats, his voice trembling with rage. You wanted people who understand my world? Exactly, Brandon says. We knew you'd appreciate the standards. You moron, David roars. The sound is so loud it distorts the speaker. Dad? Brandon's voice drops an octave. You absolute, pretentious morons, David shouts, leaning over the phone. You're worried she'll embarrass me? I am sitting in her office. I am sitting in the penthouse of the building she built. She isn't a laborer, Brandon. She owns the ground you are standing on. Silence. Dead, static silence on the other end. I am looking at a magazine cover that calls her the Iron Lady of Chicago, David continues, his voice cutting like a serrated blade. She holds the lease to my hotel. She holds the future of your trust fund in her hands. And you uninvited her because she has dirt on her boots? Dad, I don't. Brandon is stuttering. I can hear the panic rising. The sound of a worldview shattering in real time. Let me tell you something about my world, David says, and this is the moment that breaks them. In my world, we respect the builders. We respect the people who create the value, not the leeches who spend it. You look down on her? She is the only reason we even have a business to discuss. I can hear my father in the background now. What is he saying? Brandon, what does he mean she owns the building? David looks at me. He nods. It's a salute. I'm canceling Christmas, David says into the phone. I'm not coming to your house. I'm not eating your food. I would rather eat a steak with a builder on a construction site than share a turkey with a leech who doesn't know the value of a dollar or a daughter. He hits the red button. The call ends. The silence rushes back into the room, but it feels different now. It feels clean. David looks at me, his chest heaving. He looks tired, but he also looks relieved, like he finally cut away a weight he's been dragging for years. I apologize, he says gruffly, for my son, for your father, for the whole lot of them. Don't apologize, I say, picking up my hard hat. You just saved me a lot of time explaining things. But I'm not done. David thinks the revelation is over. He thinks the lease is the only leverage I have. He doesn't know about the second folder sitting in my lawyer's briefcase. I signal to my general counsel, Marcus. He steps forward and slides a thin blue file across the table to David. There is one more thing, I say. Since we're clearing the air, David opens the blue folder. His hands are still shaking from the adrenaline of the phone call, but as he scans the documents inside, the shaking stops. It's replaced by a stillness that is far more terrifying. He flips the first page, then the second. He looks up at me, his eyes wide, struggling to comprehend the magnitude of what he is holding. This is... He taps the paper. This is a deed of trust. For a residential property in the suburbs. 240 Oak Lane, I say. My father's house, the one you were supposed to visit for Christmas. David reads further. Distressed debt purchase. Foreclosure prevention protocol. Acquired 3 years ago by H Corp. 3 years ago, my father retired, I explain, my voice flat, devoid of the emotion that usually accompanies family tragedies. He wanted the country club membership and the Lexus, but he didn't have the pension to back it up. The bank initiated foreclosure proceedings in November. He hid it from everyone. He hid it from Jessica. He certainly hid it from you. I stand up and walk to the window, looking out at the sprawling gray grid of Chicago. I didn't tell him I bought the debt, I continue. I instructed my holding company to acquire the asset and suspend the foreclosure. I let him believe it was a banking error, a stroke of luck. I let him keep his pride because I thought, eventually, he might see me as something other than a failure. David closes the folder. He looks ill. You own his house, he whispers. You aren't just the landlord of my hotel. You are the bank holding the mortgage on the roof over his head. You saved him. You saved his reputation. And while you were paying for his walls, he was mocking your boots. I didn't do it for gratitude, I say. I did it because I could. Because in my world, you secure the asset. But assets depreciate. And liabilities, well, liabilities get liquidated. The intercom on the table buzzes. It's Elena, my assistant. Her voice is tight. Haley, security is calling from the lobby. There are 3 individuals demanding to see you. A Richard, a Jessica, and a Brandon. They are causing a scene. They say it's a family emergency. David looks at the speakerphone, then at me. They're here, he says. They drove 80 miles an hour to get here. They didn't come for me, I correct him. They came for the deal. They came because they realized the ATM just walked away. I walk over to the control panel on the wall and press a button. The blinds on the far wall retract, revealing a direct view of the plaza below. From 50 stories up, people are just specks. But I can see them. I can see the frantic energy of 3 tiny figures arguing with the uniformed security guards. I can see my father waving his arms. Probably shouting about his rights, about how he's the father of the CEO. I can see Jessica, probably crying, terrified that her husband's trust fund is about to dry up because she insulted the wrong landlord. David stands up and joins me at the window. He looks down at his son. At the family he thought was elite. Do you want me to go down there? David asks. His voice is heavy, like he's offering to put down a sick animal. Do you want me to tell them it's over? No, I say. I press the intercom button. Elena, I say. My voice is calm. It is the voice of a woman who just poured the foundation for a skyscraper. Tell security they are not on the guest list. Tell them that if they don't vacate the premises in 5 minutes, they are to be treated as trespassers. Call the police if necessary. Understood, Haley. David watches me. He is searching for hesitation, for a crack in the concrete. He doesn't find one. You're evicting them, David says. I'm liquidating a bad investment, I reply. They wanted a world where we don't mix. I'm just giving them what they asked for. I turn away from the window. I don't need to watch them get escorted off the property. I know what it looks like. I've seen it happen to plenty of people who tried to cut corners on my job sites. Now, I say, sitting back down at the head of the table. About that lease extension, I have a few new terms. David sits down. He doesn't argue. He picks up a pen. He knows who is in charge now. And it isn't the man with the loudest voice at the dinner table, it's the woman with the blueprints. Christmas Day doesn't look like a Hallmark card up here. It looks like gray steel and white snow against a backdrop of iron clouds. The wind on the roof of the summit tower is strong enough to knock a lesser person over, but we've bolted down the windbreaks and fired up the industrial heaters. I am not sitting at a mahogany table with crystal glasses and people who are terrified of using the wrong fork. I am sitting on a crate of rivets, holding a paper plate loaded with prime rib. David Sterling sent the meat over a peace offering, or maybe a tribute. But we're drinking cheap beer, the kind that tastes like metal and corn, because it tastes better when you're drinking it with the people who actually helped you build the roof over your head. My foreman, Mike, clinks his can against mine. He doesn't ask why I'm not with my blood relatives. He knows. In this business, you learn pretty quickly that biology is an accident, but loyalty is a choice. This crew, the welders, the electricians, the architects, they are my chosen family. They've seen me covered in mud. They've seen me scream at inspectors. And they've never once asked me to change my shoes. My phone vibrates against the cold metal of the railing. I pull it out. It's a text from Richard. Haley, please. Your mother is crying. We just want to talk. We're sorry. I stare at the screen. A year ago, this text would have broken me. I would have rushed over, desperate to fix it. Desperate to be the good daughter who smooths over the cracks. But today, I don't feel a spike of adrenaline. I don't feel the urge to explain myself. I just press delete. Then I block the number. People talk about revenge like it's a fire. They think you have to burn the other person's house down to feel warm. But that's not justice. That's arson. And I am a builder, not an arsonist. This is the justice of the builder. You don't destroy your enemies. You simply outgrow them. You build a life so massive, so undeniable, and so tall that they become nothing more than shadows at the base of your foundation. You build a skyscraper so high that when you look down, you can't even see the people who told you that you didn't belong. They are down there somewhere, in the suburbs, sitting in a house that I own, eating a dinner that tastes like regret. They are small. And I am up here, breathing the thin, clean air of the summit. I put my phone away and look out at the skyline. The lights of Chicago are starting to flicker on, a grid of gold against the winter gray. I didn't build this tower to prove them wrong. I built it because I love the view. Sometimes, you have to inspect your own foundation. If the people there are rotting, you don't patch it, you tear it down and build something new. Share this if you are building a life they said you couldn't have.